There are stories capable of piercing the heart and leaving a deep mark, and Ethan's journey is one of them. Imagine a 14-year-old boy carrying the responsibility of saving the life of the person he loves the most, his grandmother, Rose. Growing up without parents and in an orphanage where hope always seemed out of reach, Ethan found his only escape in music. But what would a boy do when his love became the last chance for healing for the one who had always been his family? This is not just a story of challenges, but of reunions that resonate with the promise of a surprising ending. It was on one of those nights, when the world slept and the courage of a few emerged, that Ethan would silently escape from the orphanage to sing in a restaurant, hoping to gather the resources needed for his grandmother's surgery. The sound of his voice was not just a melody. It was a cry of struggle and love, an attempt to turn sadness into something greater. What he did not know was that this journey would lead to a reunion that would change his life forever. Are you ready to learn the story of a boy who decided to sing to save his grandmother and find answers he never imagined searching for? From an early age, Ethan learned that life is not always generous. Raised by his grandmother Rose, he knew the strength that comes from unconditional love. Rose, with her wrinkled hands and a smile that conveyed hope, was Ethan's foundation. But as life is full of surprises, not all pleasant, Rose's health began to fail. The need for a complex surgery loomed like a shadow over the boy. What do you do when the person who has always taken care of you now needs urgent care? Ethan's heart beat with a mix of worry and determination. In the silence of the small house, memories blended with the present. The scent of herbal tea that Rose brewed on rainy afternoons, the stories of courage she told her grandson before bed. Ethan knew that leaving the situation to fate was not an option. For him, hope was a faint light that needed to be fueled by actions, not just prayers. And this is where the instinct to fight began to surface. After all, love always finds a way to turn challenges into opportunities. As Rose's health deteriorated, the need for money for the surgery became an even denser shadow over Ethan's life. He looked at his grandmother and saw the fragility in the eyes that were once full of vitality. Yet she still smiled. "We always find a way, my boy," she said in a hoarse voice but filled with tenderness. It was this faith that ignited the fire in Ethan, who, despite being young, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The community around, though welcoming, did not have the resources needed to help. Every face Ethan encountered seemed to carry its own story of struggles and survival. But among them all, Ethan was different because he had something few value in youth: courage and the relentless desire to do something great for the one he loved. It was a race against time, where every day counted, and he knew he had to be fast, creative, and fearless. And so began the search for answers. The boy with disheveled hair and a determined look knew that solutions would not come to him. He needed to chase, literally, after opportunities, even when chances seemed slim. Ethan didn't just want to help. He needed to help. For that, he was willing to break the rules and push any boundaries. The flame of hope that Rose kept alive was what drove the boy forward. The challenge of finding a solution for the surgery wasn't just about raising money. It was a test of love, a reconnection with his own strength. And Ethan, at just 14 years old, was determined to face any barrier that arose. Little did he know that soon this journey would take him down an unexpected path, where songs and old memories would begin to weave a story that would connect him to the past in ways he never imagined. The nights were cold and lonely at the orphanage where Ethan lived. Every corner of that place echoed with sighs and interrupted dreams. But for him, hope was stronger than fear. At only 14, his mind buzzed with plans. His love for his grandmother and his desire to save her made him defy the rules. And so, in the hours when the world was asleep, he slipped through the window and ran through the streets, his heart racing and his eyes shining with determination. What could be a purer act than singing to save someone you love? The path to the restaurant where he sang was not just a route. It was a symbol of hope and courage. Ethan knew danger lurked. Any misstep could result in punishment, and returning to the orphanage would be bitter. But none of that stopped him. With every hurried step, he felt like he carried a piece of his grandmother's love with him. It was as if every note he sang was a silent cry saying, "We're still here, together, There was something almost magical about that moment. When Ethan arrived at the restaurant, he felt the warmth of the lights and the murmur of the patrons. Dressed in simple clothes and a worn hat, he stepped onto the makeshift stage with a posture that belied his age. There, the boy transformed. His fears seemed to evaporate, and the world shrank to the melodies he unleashed with a voice that surprised with its strength and soul. It was his way of asking the universe for healing and kindness for his grandmother. Ethan knew that each night singing represented more than just coins in a hat. It was an opportunity to show that fame and success didn't have to be cold or distant. Instead, they could be built with love and for a noble cause. The restaurant, with its low ceiling and scent of spices, was a stage of dreams for him. The sound of his voice mingled with laughter and conversations, but there was always that moment when everyone paused, even if only for a few seconds, to listen. It didn't take long for Ethan's escapes to become routine. Each performance was a new proof that he was capable of going beyond the circumstances imposed by life. And the boy, who once saw himself trapped within the walls of an orphanage, now felt that he carried a small torch of hope in every note sung. The return to the orphanage, always under the watch of dawn, came with a subtle smile and the conviction that he was making a difference. There was something transformative in seeing the world light up as he returned, with the first rays of sun touching his face. But fate, with its unexpected turns, seemed to be preparing something more. Among the murmurs and curious glances, one figure stood out, a woman who watched him with special attention, as if the notes of his song resonated in a deep part of her soul. Ethan's heart, unbeknownst to him, was about to beat in sync with a past he barely knew. The path to the next night would be more than an escape. It would be a meeting with hidden truths. Tomas, the owner of the restaurant, was a middle-aged man with a warm smile and eyes that could see beyond appearances. On an ordinary night, amid the clinking of dishes and the noise of cutlery, something caught his attention. The boy who had entered, with disheveled hair and a determined look, was not there to escape the cold. He wanted to sing, and his voice was the very definition of hope. Initially skeptical, Tomas allowed the boy to step onto the small stage, a decision that would change not only the night but the course of both their lives. The first note from Ethan was enough to transform the atmosphere. Conversations quieted, eyes turned to the boy, and a hush of curiosity spread through the room. Tomas felt a chill run down his spine. There was something special there, something he knew needed to be nurtured. The boy was not just another young person trying to earn a few coins. He carried in his voice a story that needed to be told. Tomas realized that, even unknowingly, he had just given an opportunity that could change Ethan's destiny. As the nights passed, the relationship between Ethan and Tomas took on new colors. Tomas, who had always maintained a distant and reserved air, found himself laughing at conversations with the boy, sharing advice, and closely watching every note that came from Ethan's throat. Amid the restaurant's chatter, he began to feel something rare. The hope that this spark of talent could bring light not just to the boy but to everyone around him. And so, with each song, Tomas saw the restaurant become a home not just for Ethan but for hope. Ethan, in turn, felt something changing inside him. Each night at the restaurant was more than just a chance to gather the money he so desperately needed. It was a reunion with himself. Those nights singing, seeing the smiles and hearing the applause, brought him the certainty that he could dream, that life could be more than challenges. Tomas, with his simple and sincere way, became a mentor who taught him not only about music but about life, persistence, and the value of fighting for what one loves. The restaurant's regulars soon began to look forward to the nights when Ethan sang. It was as if his music brought a breath of love and memories to each of them. Men and women arriving weary from their hard days found themselves smiling unknowingly, swayed by the songs of a boy who, despite his youth, seemed to understand pain and hope in every note. Tomas saw this and understood that he didn't just have a singer. He had a rare gem, a promise of better days. But what Ethan and Tomas could not imagine was that among the faces in the audience, one figure was about to completely change the course of their lives. Susanna, a woman who carried a story in her eyes, felt her heart race when she heard Ethan's music. The meeting of her past and the boy's present would bring to light secrets that neither was prepared to face. The story was just beginning to unfold. That night, when Ethan stepped onto the stage, there was something different in the air. The usual chatter was silenced by the simple act of the boy adjusting the microphone. The first chords resonated, and Ethan's voice filled the space like a breeze laden with memories and promises. Each note vibrated with an intensity that touched people deeply. Faces, once distracted by dishes and conversations, now turned toward the young singer, as if he had the power to calm their internal storms. The music, full of emotion, seemed to whisper, "You can still believe, you can still dream." The performance continued with growing strength, each verse being a new heartbeat of hope. Tomas, the restaurant owner, watched with a sparkle in his eyes. It was as if every word that came out of Ethan's mouth was woven by fate itself. He knew that more than entertaining, that song carried with it the promise of something greater, something that transcended the simple act of singing. The restaurant, usually a lively meeting place, was transformed into a temple of reverent silence. The audience, eyes fixed on Ethan, seemed solemn and moved, absorbing each note as if it were a ray of light in the darkness. Among the patrons, a woman named Susanna felt something different. She was not a regular at the restaurant, but that night, something had led her there. With the first verses, she was transported to a time she thought buried. Memories of laughter, promises, and farewells. Her eyes welled up as Ethan's notes struck her deeply, and memories of a love that never healed pulsed again with almost painful force. The young singer's face bore familiar traits, and a feeling of foreboding took hold of her chest. Ethan's voice, in a melody that seemed to tell his own story, had an almost hypnotic effect. Susanna's hands trembled slightly, and before she could help it, a broken sigh escaped her lips. The restaurant, which moments before had been in a state of deep attention, turned to the sound. Susanna stumbled, her body betraying the strength she tried to maintain. It was as if the music had awakened a dormant spirit, a part of her that screamed for answers, for a reunion. In a quick motion, Tomas rushed to support her, while Ethan, not understanding why, briefly paused the music and watched the scene with wide eyes of surprise. The connection was invisible but powerful. Something was about to happen. The boy's heart beat faster, unaware that the woman on the verge of fainting could bring answers to questions he never dared to ask. The performance, marked by the beauty of music, was abruptly transformed into a prelude to revelations. The silence that followed was cut by whispers and restless murmurs. The magic of the night had turned into something much more complex, bearing the weight of old memories and the promise of unexpected reunions. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine and a flame of curiosity ignite in his heart. The story that began as a simple song now took on shapes that none of those present could have foreseen. Susanna felt as if time had stopped. The notes sung by Ethan had a gift she couldn't explain. They reopened the wounds of the past while whispering promises of healing. Sitting in the restaurant chair, her hand trembling slightly, she saw flashes of memories of a love she believed lost forever. The name she didn't dare say out loud came in waves. Antonio, the one who once filled her world with color and who, in the blink of an eye, was gone, leaving her alone, carrying the burden of longing and regret. Ethan's music, his voice laden with emotion and something so familiar, brought back memories Susanna tried hard to bury. The young man's face made her think of Antonio, but it was more than that. There was something else, an echo of something lost that she could not ignore. The resemblance was no coincidence, and a growing anguish filled her chest. The conviction that there was a deep connection between her and that boy began to take shape like a puzzle, where each sung note was a piece. The memory of Antonio and the unfulfilled promises came back with force. He was Ethan's father, though the boy never knew. Susanna never imagined life would bring her a day when she would find him like this, on a night when she only wanted to ward off the ghosts of loneliness. Now, her own inner music cried out for a chance at redemption. The shock was so strong that, before she could react, her consciousness betrayed her and she fell into a dark veil, a sudden fainting. The sound of her fall caught everyone's attention. Tomas rushed to help her, while Ethan, still shocked by the interruption of his performance, watched without understanding what was happening. The boy's heart raced, filled with a mixture of worry and curiosity. He did not know who that woman was, but something in her eyes, before they closed, seemed to scream a recognition that sent a chill down his spine. The audience, which moments before was immersed in an atmosphere of hope and magic, now exchanged uneasy glances and murmured. When Susanna regained consciousness, still dizzy and confused, her gaze immediately searched for the stage. Seeing Ethan standing there, with a glimmer of uncertainty and fear, confirmed the suspicion that had bloomed in her heart. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. With teary eyes, she felt an overwhelming mix of joy, pain, and a need for answers. Before she could articulate any words, Tomas helped her to her feet, and amid the flurry of voices and hurried gestures, the path to the truth seemed closer than ever. Susanna knew she couldn't leave without answers. Ethan's voice still echoed in her ears, like a call she could no longer ignore. Amid the confusion, the promise of reunion and healing seemed more real than ever. And so, with trembling hands and a pounding heart, she took the first step toward the stage, where a young man, unaware that he was searching, waited for answers and the story that would change his life. The hospital was a place of silence interrupted by hurried footsteps and whispered voices. Ethan, sitting in an uncomfortable chair, stared at the door to the room where his grandmother Rose was hospitalized. Fear and hope waged a battle in his chest. But that morning, the unexpected was walking toward him. Susanna, with eyes still red and a voice trembling with emotion, appeared in the corridor. The woman who had fainted the previous night brought with her a revelation that would change everything. The confirmation came with few words and many looks. Ethan was the son Susanna believed she had lost after Antonio's death. The recognition was immediate, as if fate had finally allowed the threads of their story to intertwine. Rose, weak but with a smile that lit up the room, held Ethan's hand and Susanna's, joining them like someone mending a long-torn fabric. Silence was replaced by tears and sighs of relief. Visits to the hospital became moments of rediscovery. Ethan, who had always felt the absence of a piece of himself, began to understand that the search for love was a journey in many directions. Susanna, in turn, found in Ethan the reason to reclaim the parts of herself she thought she had lost. Each conversation, each gesture full of affection, rebuilt the bridge between past and present. The wound left by Antonio, though not fully healed, now had a chance to mend. Rose, with her voice weak but still sweet, became the link between the two. She told stories of when Ethan was little, of how his voice always moved people, and how Antonio would cradle him on moonlit nights. It was as if shared memories brought more warmth to that reunion. Each passing day was a new opportunity to strengthen bonds and create memories that would one day give way to longing. But now, with the sweet taste of love regained, it was not just a story of reunion but of rebirth. Ethan, who once carried the weight of responsibility alone, now had the support of a mother who had never given up on him. Susanna, with her renewed strength, knew that the pain she had carried for so long was finally finding redemption. And Rose, who was the anchor of this entire story, saw in their exchanged glances the promise of a lighter, more loving future for all. Ethan's life would never be the same. The boy who once sneaked out at night to sing and save his grandmother now had a complete family, rebuilt amidst the most unlikely circumstances. And as the sun set that afternoon, with golden light streaming into the hospital room, everyone there knew that pain would still exist, but that hope, at last, occupied a much larger space. Now that you know Ethan's story, his struggles, and the emotional reunions that shaped his life, here's an invitation to reflect. How far would you go for those you love? Is there a passion or a talent within you waiting to be discovered, just as music was for Ethan? Perhaps it's time to set aside fear and take the first step toward your dreams. After all, life is made up of unexpected moments that can transform the present and create new possibilities. If the story touched you, ask yourself, what can you do today to change tomorrow? It could be an act of courage, a long-held conversation, or even a journey you never imagined taking. And remember, hope is not just a feeling. It is a choice we make daily. If you want to continue exploring inspiring stories that bring lessons and stir emotions, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll always be updated with stories that can transform your day and inspire you to make a difference. What will you do with the inspiration you just received?